Face it, old man, you are done." That was the last thing my son Marcus said to me before he hung up the phone. I was sitting on a plastic chair in a room that smelled like bleach and despair, wearing a thin hospital gown that did not belong to me. My bank accounts were empty. My home was sold. My family was gone. They thought they had buried me alive in that nursing home. They thought I was just a confused senior citizen who had lost his mind. But they forgot I was a structural engineer. I spent 40 years building bridges. While they were celebrating, I triggered a hidden fail-safe protocol I had legally buried in the paperwork weeks earlier. When my son went to closing the next morning to collect his millions, he didn't get a check. He got arrested for kidnapping and fraud on live television. Before I reveal exactly what that fail-safe clause was, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And please subscribe if you believe that a father's kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. This nightmare began exactly 3 years ago in room 402 at Mercy General Hospital. I was holding my wife Eleanor's hand, watching the heart monitor trace the final few beats of a 50-year marriage. The room was cold, sterile, and filled with the rhythmic hissing of the oxygen machine. Eleanor squeezed my fingers with surprising strength for a woman who had barely eaten in weeks. "Isaiah," she whispered, her voice barely a rattle in her chest. "Promise me you will look out for Marcus. Promise me you will always be there for the family." I leaned in close, fighting back the tears that were burning my eyes. "I promise, honey," I choked out. "I will always take care of them. Always." Eleanor passed away at 6:47 a.m. that Tuesday. When the flatline tone whined through the room, I felt half of my own soul leave my body. I kept my promise to her. I kept it with every fiber of my being, and maybe, just maybe, I kept it too well. After the funeral, the house felt like a tomb. It was a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs, paid off since 1995, filled with silence and memories. Marcus came to me a week later, his eyes red and swollen. He sat at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone in this big place," he said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. "It is not healthy. Why don't you move closer to us? We want to take care of you. We want you to be part of our daily lives." I looked at him and saw my little boy. I didn't see the 45-year-old regional sales manager. I saw the kid I taught to ride a bike. I thought about Eleanor's dying wish. I thought about being closer to my granddaughter, Jasmine. "Okay, son," I said. "Let's do it." That decision was the first domino. I put the colonial on the market the next week. The real estate market was hot, and I sold it for $890,000. It was a fortune for a man who grew up with nothing. But to me, it was just security for my old age. I found a modest, modern condo just 10 minutes from Marcus and Keisha's rental house. It was perfect. 2 bedrooms, a balcony, and close enough for those Sunday dinners Marcus promised. "This is going to be amazing, Dad," Marcus said as we moved my boxes in. "We are going to be a real family again. Jasmine can come over after school. We will have barbecues. You won't be lonely anymore." Keisha hugged me tight. She smelled like expensive perfume and sincerity. "We are so happy you are here, Isaiah," she said. "We are going to treat you like a king." For 2 months, it felt real. I felt warm. I felt loved. I felt like I was honoring Eleanor's memory. But the first crack in the facade appeared on a rainy Thursday evening. Marcus called me, his voice tight with stress. "Dad, I need you to come over. It is urgent." I drove to their rental house in the rain, my heart pounding. I found Marcus pacing in the living room while Keisha sat on the sofa, staring at the floor. Jasmine was in her room with the door shut. "What is it?" I asked. "Is someone sick?" "No, Dad, it is not health," Marcus said, running a hand over his bald head. "It is housing. Our landlord is selling this place. We have to move in 60 days. "That is terrible," I said. "But you can find another rental." Keisha looked up, tears streaming down her face. "We are tired of renting, Isaiah. We want stability for Jasmine. We found this incredible house in a gated community. Great schools, safe streets, a big yard for a dog. It is the American dream." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me pictures. A sprawling brick house with white pillars and a 3-car garage. It was beautiful. "So buy it," I said. "You have a good job, Marcus." "That is the problem," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "My credit is good, but my commission checks have been inconsistent lately. The bank approved the loan, but we are short on the down payment. If we don't come up with 20%, we lose the house. We lose everything. I looked at their desperate faces. I heard Eleanor's voice in my head. Take care of them, Isaiah. How much? I asked. $280,000, Marcus said. The number hung in the air like a lead weight. That was a third of my liquid savings, a third of the money I got from selling my home. Dad, it is not a gift, Marcus added quickly. Think of it as an investment in the family. When the market turns, we will pay you back. Or we can add your name to the deed later. We just need to secure the house now. Keisha walked over and took my hand. Please, Isaiah, do it for Jasmine. She needs a real home. I looked at the pictures again. I looked at my son. I pulled out my checkbook. I will write the check tomorrow, I said. Marcus let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. Thank you, Dad. You are saving us. You are saving this family. The next morning, I went to the bank. The teller asked me if I wanted a cashier's check or a wire transfer. I wired $280,000 directly to the title company. No loan agreement, no promissory note, no lien on the property. Just a father helping his son. When they got the keys, they threw a massive housewarming party. They invited their friends, their colleagues, their neighbors. Marcus stood in the center of the living room, holding a glass of champagne. I want to make a toast, he shouted, to family, and to my father Isaiah, who made this dream possible. Everyone clapped. People patted me on the back. You are a good man, they said. You are a generous father. I stood there, sipping my sparkling water, feeling proud. I felt useful. I looked at Jasmine running through the backyard, laughing with her friends, and I told myself it was worth every penny. I didn't know then that the house was just the appetizer. I didn't know that my generosity was like blood in the water, and the sharks were just beginning to circle. The $280,000 check wasn't an investment in our future. It was the down payment on my own destruction. The requests didn't come all at once like a tidal wave. They came like a slow rising tide, inch by inch, until I was up to my neck without realizing I was drowning. It started with education. In my generation, you went to the neighborhood school and you made the best of it. But apparently, things had changed. 3 months after they moved into the big house, Jasmine came over to my condo on a Tuesday afternoon. She threw her backpack on my sofa and let out a heavy sigh. What is wrong, Jazz? I asked her, handing her a plate of the oatmeal cookies she used to love. It is school, Grandpa, she said, not touching the cookies. The classes are too big. The teachers don't care. I am trying to get into AP chemistry, but the labs are totally outdated. I am never going to get into a good college with grades from there. My heart sank. Jasmine was smart, brilliant actually. She had Eleanor's mind for puzzles and numbers. Later that evening, I brought it up during dinner at Marcus's house. Jasmine seems worried about her classes, I said, cutting into a dry pork chop. Marcus exchanged a look with Keisha. We know, Dad, he said, putting down his fork. The public school district has gone downhill. We have been looking at St. Jude's Academy. It is the best private prep school in the state. So send her there, I said. Education is important. Keisha let out a short, bitter laugh. We would love to, Isaiah, but the tuition is $45,000 a year. With the new mortgage and the moving costs, we just can't stretch that far. It breaks my heart knowing she is falling behind because we are short on cash. I looked at Jasmine. She was pushing peas around her plate, looking small and defeated. I thought about my bank account. I still had plenty left from the house sale. I was saving it for medical needs or nursing care down the line. But what was the point of hoarding money if my granddaughter's future was at risk? Don't worry about it, I said, feeling that familiar swell of pride. Grandpa will take care of it. Jasmine's head snapped up. Really, Grandpa? I will write the check directly to the school, I said. $45,000. Consider it done. They hugged me. They told me I was the best grandfather in the world. I went home that night feeling like a hero. I didn't see the pattern yet. I didn't see that every problem they had was a lock, and I was just the key they turned whenever they wanted something. 2 months later, it was the car. Keisha was driving a 5-year-old Honda Accord. It was a good car, reliable. But one Sunday, Marcus came into my condo looking pale. Dad, we had a scare today, he said, pacing my small living room. Keisha's brakes made a weird noise on the highway. She almost slid into a truck. Is she okay? I asked, standing up. "She is fine," he said. "But I can't let her drive that death trap anymore. It is not safe. Not with Jasmine in the car. She needs something bigger. Something with all the modern safety features. Lane assist, automatic braking, heavy steel frame." "You are right," I said. "You should look for a certified pre-owned Volvo or maybe a Toyota Highlander." Marcus shook his head. We looked. They are okay, but Keisha found this Range Rover. "It is rated the safest SUV on the market. It is built like a tank, Dad. But the payments are just out of our reach right now." I should have said no. I should have told him to buy what he could afford. But he played the safety card. He played the what if Jasmine gets hurt card. "How much is the down payment?" I asked. "We don't want payments, Dad," Marcus said. "The interest rates are robbery. If we pay cash, we get a discount. It is $82,000 out the door." $82,000. I choked on my coffee. "Marcus, that is a luxury vehicle." "It is a safety vehicle," he corrected me. "What is the price of your granddaughter's life, Dad?" I bought the car. A week later, Keisha pulled up in a gleaming black Range Rover that cost more than my first 3 houses combined. She honked the horn and waved. I waved back, but my stomach felt tight. Then came the family bonding trips. "Dad, we need to make memories," Keisha said in November. "We are going to Aspen for Christmas, a real snowy Christmas. We rented a chalet. You have to come." I paid for the chalet because it was a bit over budget for them. $12,000 for the week. I paid for the first-class plane tickets because Marcus said his back couldn't handle coach. I don't ski. I don't like the cold. I spent that week sitting in a lodge by myself, drinking $20 hot chocolates, while they hit the slopes. In the evenings, they would come back exhausted, stare at their phones, and post pictures on Instagram captioned "Family Bliss and Blessed Life." I was in the background of one photo, blurry and out of focus. I wasn't a participant. I was the sponsor. But the biggest blow, the one that really drained me, came 6 months after that. Marcus came to my condo in the middle of a workday. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. He looked manic, excited. "Dad, I am done," he said. "I quit." "You quit your job?" I asked. "Marcus, you have a mortgage. You have expenses." "I have a vision, Dad," he said. "I am starting my own consulting firm, Vance Strategic Solutions. I have the contacts. I have the knowledge. Why should I make millions for my boss when I can make them for this family? This is about legacy. This is about building something I can pass down to Jasmine." He showed me a business plan. It was full of buzzwords and colorful graphs. It looked impressive, but I was an engineer. I looked for the foundation, and I couldn't find one. "It says here you need seed capital," I said, tapping the paper. $150,000. "That is just to get the office space and the servers running," he said. "Dad, this is a sure thing. I already have clients lined up. I just need the runway." "Marcus," I said, my voice trembling, "that is a huge chunk of what I have left. I have already given you so much. The house, the school, the car." Marcus's face changed. It wasn't the warm face of my son anymore. It was cold, calculating. "Dad, that money is just sitting in a low-yield mutual fund," he said. "I saw the statements on your desk. You are making 2%. I can triple that in a year. Don't you believe in me? Don't you want your son to succeed? Or do you want me to be a wage slave forever?" He knew what was on my desk. He had been looking. That realization sent a chill down my spine, but I ignored it. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in the legacy. I transferred the money the next day. $150,000. Within 8 months, the business was gone. "Market conditions," Marcus said. "Bad timing." The clients flaked. He didn't seem devastated. He didn't apologize. He just shrugged and went back to playing video games on the 80-inch TV I had bought him for his birthday. He never mentioned paying me back. By the end of the first year, I had spent over $500,000 on them. My nest egg was cracking, and for the first time, I started to wonder if they loved me, or if they just loved what I could give them. The atmosphere in the big house changed the moment I stopped writing checks. It was subtle at first, like the temperature dropping a few degrees before a storm. The warm greetings at the door became distracted nods. The long conversations about my week turned into one-word answers. The Sunday dinners, which used to be elaborate feasts with roast beef and wine, turned into pizza delivery or takeout Chinese. I was no longer the guest of honor. I was the silent sponsor sitting at the end of the table. The turning point came in early February. I had told Marcus that I couldn't fund their spring break trip to Hawaii. My liquidity was getting low, I explained. I needed to be careful. Marcus hadn't yelled. He had just stared at me with a look of profound disappointment, as if I had broken a contract. That night, after I left, I realized I had left my reading glasses on their kitchen island. I drove back 10 minutes later. I didn't ring the doorbell because I had a key. I walked into the hallway and heard them in the kitchen. "He is being so selfish," Keisha was saying. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. It was sharp. "We count on that money, Marcus." "I know," Marcus replied. "The old man is tightening the purse strings. He thinks he is going to live forever." I froze. I backed out of the house silently and drove home with my heart hammering in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was paranoid, wondering if I was misinterpreting their stress. I needed to know the truth. I needed data. I was an engineer, and you cannot solve a problem without accurate data. The next morning, I went to an electronics store. I didn't ask for help. I found what I needed in the dictation aisle, a Sony ICD-UX 570 digital voice recorder. It was small, black, and thinner than a pack of gum. It had a voice activation mode and a battery life that lasted for days. I went to Marcus's house that afternoon while they were at work. I told the dog walker I was just dropping off some mail. I went to the dining room where the family gathered most often. On the mantel above the fireplace sat an old mahogany clock that had belonged to Eleanor. It was a beautiful piece, hollow in the back. I slipped the recorder inside the clock case, right behind the pendulum. I set it to activate on sound. It was invisible. It was my silent witness. I left it there for 3 days. When I retrieved it, I told myself I was crazy. I told myself I would hear nothing but mundane chatter. I sat at my kitchen table and plugged the device into my laptop. I put on my headphones. The first few files were nothing. The dog barking, the TV news. Then, file 4. "I am sick of having him around." Keisha's voice cut through the static. "He smells like old mothballs in desperation." "He is lonely, Keisha," Marcus said. "He is a leech," she snapped. "A rich leech, but a leech." "How much does he have left?" "Maybe 400,000 in the retirement accounts," Marcus estimated, "plus the equity in his condo. Maybe another 200 there. We need access to it, Marcus. We are drowning. If we don't pay the credit cards this month, we are going to get cut off. You need to get him to sign the papers." "What papers?" Marcus asked. "The power of attorney," Keisha said. "Tell him it is for his health. Tell him it is a safety net. Once we have that, we don't have to ask for money anymore. We just take it." I took the headphones off. My hands were shaking so hard I knocked over my coffee mug. The brown liquid dripped onto the floor, but I didn't move to clean it up. They weren't just ungrateful. They were predators. 3 days later, the trap was sprung. "We invited you over for a special dinner," Keisha said, pouring me a glass of cheap wine. "We have been so worried about you lately, Isaiah." "Worried?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Why?" "You seem forgetful," Marcus said. He was cutting a steak, not looking me in the eye. "You left your glasses here the other day. You repeat stories sometimes. We just want to make sure you are protected." Keisha pulled a thick folder from the sidebar. She placed it on the table next to my plate. "This is a durable power of attorney," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "It just means that if, God forbid, you have a stroke or an accident, Marcus can handle your bills. He can make sure your doctors are paid. It is just a backup plan." I looked at the document. It was 12 pages of dense legal jargon. I put on my glasses. I saw the clauses: full financial authority, unrestricted access, real estate conveyance. It was a license to steal. "I really don't think this is necessary," I said. "Dad, please," Marcus said, reaching for my hand. "Do it for my peace of mind. I can't sleep worrying about you." I looked at my son. I saw the desperation in his eyes, but I also saw the greed. I knew if I refused, they would just try a different angle. Maybe they would try to have me declared incompetent anyway. I needed to buy time. I needed to control the timeline. "I am an engineer, Marcus," I said, picking up a pen. "We never build a structure without a lifespan. We never sign a contract without a termination date." "What do you mean?" Keisha asked, her eyes narrowing. I will sign it, I said, but I am adding a sunset clause, a review period. I flipped to the back page. I wrote in my neat, block lettering, "This authority shall remain in effect for exactly 380 days from the date of signature, after which it shall expire unless renewed in writing." 380 days, Marcus said, doing the math. That is a year and 2 weeks. It is a trial run, I lied. If you handle my affairs well for a year, we can renew it. If not, it expires. It keeps us all honest. Keisha looked at Marcus. I could see them calculating. A year was plenty of time for them. They only needed a month to drain my accounts. Fine, Dad, Marcus said, smiling. That sounds very fair, very professional. I signed the paper. I watched Marcus snatch it off the table like a starving dog grabbing a bone. He thought he had just won the lottery. He thought he owned me. He didn't notice the other thing I had written. He didn't know that 380 days wasn't just a random number. It was the exact amount of time I needed to execute the plan I had already started formulating in my head. I drove home that night with the taste of ash in my mouth. I had just handed the keys to my life to the people who wanted to destroy it, but they forgot that I was the one who built the house, and I knew exactly where the trapdoors were. The ink on the power of attorney was barely dry before the fog rolled in. It wasn't a weather pattern. It was inside my head. For 20 years I had taken a standard dosage of lisinopril for my blood pressure, one small yellow pill every morning. I functioned perfectly. But 3 days after signing that document, Keisha showed up at my condo with a new orange bottle. "The pharmacy switched suppliers, Isaiah," she said, handing me the bottle with a warm smile. "These are the new generics. Same medicine, just a different shape." I trusted her. She was a nurse. She was family. I took the pill. Within an hour the room started to tilt. My hands shook so badly I couldn't hold a pen. My thoughts felt like they were moving through molasses. When I tried to stand up, my knees buckled and I had to grab the kitchen counter to keep from hitting the floor. I called Marcus in a panic. "Son, I don't feel right. I think I am having a stroke." He came over immediately, but he didn't call 911. He sat me down on the sofa and looked at me with pity. "Dad, you are fine," he said. "You are just having one of your episodes. You seem confused again." Confused. That was the word they started planting, like a seed in a garden of lies. Over the next few weeks, the episodes got worse. I would wake up in the afternoon not knowing what day it was. I would lose my keys and find them in the refrigerator. I would start a sentence and forget the end of it. I was terrified. I thought my mind was finally failing me, just like Eleanor's had at the end. I thought I was losing myself. But the engineer in me noticed a pattern. The confusion always hit exactly 45 minutes after I took the morning pill. It cleared up late at night right before bed. It was a data point and I clung to it like a lifeline. Then came the gas incident. I woke up on a Tuesday night to the smell of rotten eggs. The air was thick with it. I stumbled out of my bedroom coughing and found Marcus standing in my kitchen. He had a towel over his face and was cranking the windows open. "Dad, are you trying to kill us all?" he screamed. His voice was muffled by the towel. "You left all 4 burners on wide open. No flame, just gas." I stared at the stove. The knobs were indeed turned to the high position, but I hadn't cooked dinner that night. I had eaten a cold turkey sandwich over the sink. I distinctly remembered checking the stove before I went to bed. It was a habit I had developed over 40 years of safety inspections. Check the locks, check the stove, check the thermostat. I didn't leave these on Marcus, I rasped, my throat burning from the fumes. "I didn't cook tonight." "You are denying reality, Dad," Marcus shouted. He pulled out his phone and started recording me. "Look at this, everyone. This is what I am dealing with. My father almost blew up the building. He is a danger to himself and others." He wasn't talking to me. He was building a case file. He was performing for an invisible audience of judges and doctors. I felt a cold knot of fear in my stomach that had nothing to do with the gas. I realized then that my son wasn't saving me. He was framing me. The isolation started the next day. I tried to call Deacon Moss, my best friend from the church choir. We spoke every Thursday without fail. I dialed his number on my landline, but instead of a ring, I got a fast, busy signal. I tried again. Same signal. I picked up my cell phone. I scrolled to his contact and pressed call. The screen flashed, call failed. I tried my friend Julian. Call failed. I tried the pharmacy. Call failed. Panic rose in my chest. I drove to the T-Mobile store down the street, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The young man at the counter looked up my account. "It looks like the account holder placed parental controls on this line, sir," he said. "All outgoing calls are blocked except to emergency services and approved numbers." "Approved numbers?" I asked. "Yes, sir. The account is managed by a Mr. Marcus Vance. He set the restrictions yesterday." I walked out of the store feeling like the walls were closing in. I was a prisoner in my own life. My medication was poisoning me. My home was being staged as a crime scene. My communications were cut. I needed to check the recorder. It was my only link to reality. I waited until Sunday when they came over for a wellness check. While Keisha was in the bathroom and Marcus was pretending to fix my Wi-Fi router, I slipped the device out of the clock and replaced it with the spare one I had bought. It was a risky move, but I had to know. That night I listened to the files. What I heard froze the blood in my veins. It was recorded the night of the gas incident. "Did you turn them all on?" Keisha asked. "Yeah, all 4, Marcus replied. I waited until he was snoring. The place reeked in 5 minutes. It was perfect. "Do you think he suspects anything about the pills?" Keisha asked. "No, he is too out of it," Marcus laughed. "That haloperidol mix is strong, Doctor. Pierce said it would mimic advanced dementia symptoms if we gave it to someone with normal brain function. It causes confusion, tremors, and memory loss. It is exactly what we need for the competency hearing. Haloperidol. An antipsychotic. They weren't giving me blood pressure medicine. They were chemically lobotomizing me. We need to move up the timeline," Keisha said. "I can't keep coming over here every day to check on him. It is exhausting." "Just 2 more weeks, babe," Marcus said. "The hearing is on the 15th. Once Dr. Pierce testifies that Dad is senile, we can put him in the facility. Then we sell the condo and the money is ours." I sat in the dark listening to my son and his wife plot my disposal. The fear vanished. The confusion vanished. The trembling in my hands stopped. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. I was under attack. I went to the bathroom and flushed the orange pills down the toilet. I would fake the symptoms from now on. I would stumble. I would slur my words. I would play the role they had written for me. But while they were watching the performance, I would be preparing the finale. They wanted a confused old man. I would give them one. But they forgot that underneath the gray hair and the shuffling walk, I was still the man who designed the structural supports for the I-85 overpass. I knew how to handle heavy loads, and I knew exactly how to bring a bridge down on top of the enemy. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place on a humid Tuesday night just 3 days before my power of attorney was set to expire. I knew the timeline was tight. I knew they were getting desperate, but I didn't know how far they were willing to go until I heard the conversation that shattered the last remnant of my heart. I was lying on the guest bed in my own condo, pretending to be unconscious. I had crushed the fake pills into the carpet behind the nightstand earlier that evening. I kept my breathing shallow and rhythmic. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I played the part of the medicated invalid perfectly. The door to the bedroom was cracked open just an inch. Light from the hallway spilled across the floor. I heard footsteps approaching, then silence. They were watching me, checking to see if the drugs had worked. "He is out cold," Marcus whispered. His voice was close. Too close. That double dose knocked him out in 20 minutes. "Good," Keisha replied from the hallway. "We need to talk. The realtor just called." They walked away toward the living room, but they didn't close the door. They were arrogant. They thought I was a vegetable. I slid my hand under the pillow and pressed the record button on the Sony device I had hidden there. Then I crept out of bed and sat on the floor with my ear pressed against the crack in the door frame. "So what did the realtor say?" Marcus asked. The sound of a wine bottle opening echoed through the quiet condo. "We have a cash offer," Keisha said. Her voice was trembling with excitement. "A developer wants the condo. They are paying 20% over asking price because they want to combine it with the unit next door." "How much?" Marcus asked. $850,000, Keisha said. "Plus with the retirement accounts we liquidated and the jewelry we found in Eleanor's safety deposit box, we are looking at a total haul of $1.5 million. $1.5 million. I bit my knuckle to keep from gasping. They had raided Eleanor's safety deposit box. The pearls I gave her on our 30th anniversary. The diamond earrings from our honeymoon. They were gone. "That is enough to clear the debts," Marcus said. "We can pay off the house. We can pay off the credit cards. We can start fresh. But we have to move fast," Keisha warned. "The closing date is set for Friday. The condo has to be empty." "What about him?" Marcus asked. He gestured toward the room where I was hiding. We can't have him here when the inspectors come. He might say something. That is taken care of, Keisha said. I spoke to Dr. Pierce today. He signed the emergency custody order this afternoon. He listed Isaiah as a danger to himself. Acute dementia with paranoid delusions. Dr. Pierce, Marcus asked. Is he sure? He hasn't even examined Dad in a month. I wrote the report for him, Keisha said. I filled in the symptoms, the gas incident, the confusion, the aggression. Dr. Pierce just signed the bottom line. He owes me a favor after I covered up that dosage error he made last year. So where does he go? Marcus asked. Sunset Ridge, Keisha replied. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Sunset Ridge wasn't a retirement community. It was a state-funded warehouse for the indigent and the insane. It was a place where people went to be forgotten. They have a bed opening in the secure memory unit, Keisha continued. We drop him off tonight. They sedate him for 48 hours to acclimate him. By the time he wakes up, the condo will be sold, the locks will be changed, and we will be on a plane to Cabo. Tonight. Marcus sounded hesitant. That seems rough, Keisha. Do you want the money or not, Marcus? She snapped. Do you want to lose the house? Do you want to go back to renting? Because if he wakes up and revokes that power of attorney, we lose everything. This is survival. It is him or us. There was a long silence. I prayed my son would speak up. I prayed he would remember the baseball games, the fishing trips, the way I held him when he scraped his knee. Okay, Marcus said finally. His voice was flat. Let's get it over with. I scrambled back into bed. I hid the recorder in the waistband of my pajama pants and pulled my shirt down over it. I lay back and closed my eyes. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. 5 minutes later, the door opened. Dad, Marcus said loudly. Dad, wake up. I groaned and opened my eyes, blinking against the harsh overhead light. Marcus, what time is it? It is late, Dad, he said. He was sweating. He wouldn't look at me. There has been an emergency with the building, a gas leak. We have to evacuate. Gas leak. I slurred my words intentionally. Again? Yes, again, Keisha said, stepping into the room. She was holding a duffel bag. I packed a few things for you, Isaiah. We are going to take you somewhere safe. They pulled me out of bed. I pretended to be too weak to stand. Marcus draped my arm over his shoulder and half dragged me to the door. I looked around my condo one last time. The photos on the wall, the books on the shelf, the life I had built. I knew I would never see it again. They shoved me into the back seat of the Range Rover I had paid for. Keisha drove. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. No one spoke. The city lights blurred past as we drove away from the nice suburbs and into the industrial district. We pulled up to a gray concrete building surrounded by a high chain link fence. The sign out front read, Sunset Ridge Extended Care Facility. It looked like a prison. Where are we? I asked, letting panic seep into my voice. This isn't your house. It is a temporary shelter, Dad, Marcus lied. Just for tonight. They walked me into the lobby. It smelled of industrial strength lemon cleaner and old urine. A nurse behind bulletproof glass buzzed us in. Keisha handed over a thick file of paperwork. This is the admission packet, she told the nurse. Dr. Pierce called ahead. He is very agitated. He needs the sedative immediately. The nurse nodded. She looked tired. She didn't look at me as a person. She looked at me as paperwork. Room 304, she said. Orderlies are on the way. Marcus turned to leave. He didn't hug me. He didn't say goodbye. He just turned his back and walked toward the exit. Marcus, I called out. My voice wasn't slurred anymore. It was clear. Marcus, look at me. He stopped. He turned slowly. His face was a mask of guilt and greed. You are going to regret this, I said softly. He flinched. For a second he looked terrified. Then Keisha grabbed his arm. Ignore him, baby, she said, pulling him toward the door. It is just the dementia talking. He doesn't know what he is saying. They walked out the double doors and into the night. 2 large orderlies grabbed my arms. Come on, Pops, one of them said. Time for bed. They dragged me down a long hallway lined with moaning patients and flickering lights. They pushed me into a room with 2 metal cots and a barred window. They injected something into my arm before I could fight back. As the darkness closed in, I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt cold, hard determination. They had taken my home. They had taken my money. They had taken my freedom. But they had made one fatal mistake. They left me with the recorder. and they forgot that an engineer does his best work when the pressure is highest. I closed my eyes and let the sedative take me, but as I drifted off, I wasn't dreaming of escape. I was dreaming of the demolition. I woke up to the sound of screaming. It wasn't a terrified scream, but a repetitive rhythmic howling that sounded more like a machine breaking down than a human being. I opened my eyes and stared at a ceiling stained with brown watermarks. The air smelled of boiled cabbage and old urine masked by cheap pine cleaner. My head throbbed in time with the screaming down the hall. I sat up slowly. I was in a room the size of a prison cell. The walls were painted a peeling institutional beige. There was another bed across from me, occupied by a lump of gray blankets that rose and fell with wheezing breaths. I checked my waistband immediately. The hard plastic square of the Sony recorder was still there, tucked against my hip bone. They had taken my wallet. They had taken my watch, but they had missed the weapon. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cold linoleum. I was wearing the same clothes I had been kidnapped in, but my shoes were gone. I was wearing yellow non-slip socks. I walked to the door. It was locked from the outside. I looked through the small reinforced glass window. A long hallway stretched out in both directions, lined with identical heavy doors. A nurse in blue scrubs was walking past, pushing a cart filled with small paper cups. "Hey," I called out. I tapped on the glass. "Excuse me." She stopped and looked at me. Her face was tired and her eyes were empty. "Mr. Vance," she said through the heavy door, "you need to stay in your room. Dr. Pierce hasn't cleared you for common area privileges yet." "I need to make a phone call," I said. "I have the right to contact my family." "You are under an emergency custody order," she said, checking a clipboard. "Your son is your legal guardian. He knows you are here. He is the one who admitted you." "I need to speak to him," I insisted. "Please, it is urgent." She sighed. She looked at her watch. 5 minutes, she said. "But if you get agitated, I am sedating you again. Do you understand?" "I understand." She unlocked the door and led me to the nurse's station. There was a corded phone on the counter. My hands were shaking as I picked up the receiver. It wasn't fear anymore. It was rage. Cold, calculating rage. I dialed Marcus's cell number. I knew it by heart. I had paid for the phone he held in his hand. I had paid for the plan he used. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hello?" "Marcus," I said. My voice was raspy. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear traffic in the background. He was driving. "Dad," he said finally. His voice wasn't apologetic. It sounded annoyed, like I was a telemarketer interrupting his dinner. "You shouldn't be calling me. The nurse said you were supposed to be asleep for another 12 hours. "Why am I here, Marcus?" I asked. "Because you are sick," he said. "Because you can't take care of yourself. We went over this." "Cut the act," I said. "I am not recording this call, Marcus. There is no audience here. Just tell me the truth. Why did you do this to me?" He laughed. It was a dry, ugly sound. "You want the truth?" he asked. "Okay, here is the truth. You were sucking us dry. You were sitting on all that money, living in that condo while we were drowning. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to maintain our lifestyle? The private school, the club membership, the cars. I paid for all of that," I said. "I gave you everything you asked for. You gave us crumbs," he snapped. "You gave us handouts. You made me beg for every check. You made me feel like a child. Well, guess what, Dad? Now the roles are reversed. Now you are the child. You are the dependent. And I am the one in charge. I want to go home," I said. "Come pick me up." "Home," he scoffed. "You don't have a home anymore." "What do you mean?" "The closing is in an hour," Marcus said. "The developer is wiring the funds at noon. The condo is gone, Dad. Your furniture is in a dumpster. Your clothes are at Goodwill. There is nothing to go back to." "You sold my house," I whispered. "I liquidated an asset," he corrected me. "And since I have power of attorney, that money goes into the family account. It is finally going to be used for something fast, not just sitting there gathering dust while you rot." "You are a thief," I said. "You are stealing my life." "I am taking my inheritance early," he said. "Call it an advance. Besides, you are better off where you are. 3 meals a day, medical care. You don't have to worry about bills anymore. You can just sit there and fade away. That is what old people do, right? They fade away." "Marcus, listen to me," I said. "You are making a mistake. You are underestimating me." "Face it, old man, you are done," he interrupted. His voice was dripping with venom. "You are legally incompetent. You are institutionalized. No one is going to listen to you. You are just another crazy old guy in a state facility. You are a ghost. I gripped the phone so tight the plastic creaked. Is that how you see me? I asked. A ghost? You have been a ghost to me for years, he said. Ever since Mom died, you have just been a walking wallet. And now the wallet is empty. So do us both a favor and stop calling. I have a closing to attend. The line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver, listening to the dial tone. A ghost. A walking wallet. That is what my son saw when he looked at me. He didn't see the father who taught him to throw a curveball. He didn't see the man who sat up with him when he had the flu. He saw an ATM machine that had finally dispensed its last $20 bill. Mr. Vance, the nurse said, gently taking the phone from my hand. Your time is up. I looked at her. I looked at the gray walls. I looked at the barred windows. Marcus was right about one thing. The Isaiah Vance who had walked into that condo with a heart full of hope was gone. He had died the moment his son hung up the phone, but something else had taken his place. I walked back to my room without protesting. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the screaming down the hall. Let them think I was a ghost. Ghosts are invisible. Ghosts can walk through walls. And ghosts are very, very good at haunting the people who murdered them. I checked the recorder one more time. The red light was off, but the battery was full. I didn't need a phone to destroy Marcus. I had his own voice. And I had one more call to make. But first I had to survive the night. The night dragged on like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I sat on the edge of the metal cot and watched the moonlight crawl across the linoleum floor. The man in the bed next to me groaned in his sleep, a sound of pure misery that echoed the feeling in my own heart. Marcus had cut me deep, but as I sat there in the dark, a small flicker of hope refused to die. Jasmine, my granddaughter, the girl I had taught to ride a bike, the girl I had sat with for hours helping with algebra homework, the girl whose laughter used to fill my house. Marcus and Keisha were corrupted by greed, but Jasmine was young. She was just a child. She had to be a victim in this too. They probably lied to her. They probably told her I was sick and that this was for my own good. If I could just reach her, I could explain. I could get her to help me. She was 18 now, a legal adult. She could drive. She could come get me. I waited until the shift change at 6 a.m. The tired night nurse left and a young orderly named Ray came on duty. He looked bored, scrolling through his phone at the station. I walked up to the glass. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I stood tall. Excuse me, young man, I said through the glass. Ray looked up. He saw the desperation in my eyes, but he also saw the dignity. I need to make one phone call, I said. It is to my granddaughter. It is her birthday today. It was a lie, but engineers know that sometimes you have to bypass a circuit to get the machine running. Please, I added softly. I just want to wish her a happy birthday before the doctors start their rounds. Ray hesitated. He looked at the camera in the corner, then back at me. He was young enough to still have a heart that hadn't been hardened by this place. Make it quick, Pops, he said, unlocking the door. 2 minutes. I walked to the phone with trembling hands. I dialed Jasmine's cell number. I prayed she would answer. It was early, but she always woke up early for swim practice. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Jasmine, I breathed. Thank God. It is Grandpa. There was a pause. A long, cold silence that sent a shiver down my spine. Grandpa, she said. Her voice wasn't surprised. It was flat. Why are you calling me? Honey, listen to me, I said, speaking fast. Your parents put me in a nursing home against my will. They are selling my condo. They have taken everything. I need you to come get me. I am at Sunset Ridge on the east side. Please, Jasmine. I waited for the gasp. I waited for the outrage. I waited for her to say, I am on my way, Grandpa. Instead, I heard a heavy sigh. A sigh of annoyance. Grandpa, stop, she said. Mom and Dad told me you might call. They said you would try to guilt-trip me. Guilt-trip you? I asked, stunned. Jasmine, I am locked in a facility. I am not guilt-tripping you. I am asking for help. You are always doing this, she said. Her voice rose in pitch, sounding like a petulant child. You are always making everything about you. Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? Embarrassing, I repeated. The word felt like a slap in the face. Yes, embarrassing, she snapped. My friends have been talking about it. Everyone knows you lost your mind. Everyone knows you tried to blow up your apartment. It is humiliating, Grandpa. I have a reputation to think about. I am trying to get into a sorority next year. I don't need a crazy grandfather ruining my social life. Jasmine, I didn't try to blow up anything, I said, my voice breaking. Your father staged that. They drugged me. They are stealing my money. Oh my God, stop with the conspiracy theories, she groaned. It is pathetic. Just accept that you are old and you need help. And honestly, the money isn't yours anyway. I froze. The receiver felt cold against my ear. What did you say? The money, she said casually. It is family money. It belongs to all of us. You have been hoarding it for years while we struggled. Do you know how hard it is to be the poor kid at a rich school? Do you know what it is like to drive a 5-year-old car when everyone else has a new BMW? I bought your mother a Range Rover, I whispered. I paid $45,000 for your tuition, and that is the least you could do, she shot back. You are supposed to take care of us, but you made us beg for it. You made us jump through hoops. Mom said you were going to cut us off. You were going to let us lose the house. How is that love, Grandpa? I gripped the counter to keep from falling. This wasn't just Marcus's greed. This was a rot that had spread to the roots. I had watered this plant with money and love, and it had grown poisonous thorns. So you know, I asked. You know they are selling my home? Yeah, obviously, she said. Dad promised he would get me a new convertible with the closing money. A Mercedes, and he is going to pay for my sorority dues for all 4 years. So don't try to ruin this for me, okay? I finally have a chance to be someone. You are trading your grandfather for a car, I asked. My voice was barely audible. I am trading a burden for a future, she said. Look, I have to go. I have practice. Don't call me again, Grandpa. It is weird. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like a dying insect. Ray, the orderly, was watching me. He looked concerned. You okay, Pops? He asked. I slowly hung up the phone. I felt lightheaded, hollow. The pain I had felt when Eleanor died was sharp and clean. It was the pain of loss. This pain was different. It was dirty. It was the pain of realization. I had spent my life building a family. I thought I was building a fortress of love and loyalty, but I had built a house of cards on a foundation of sand. My son was a thief. My daughter-in-law was a conspirator. And my granddaughter, the sweet girl I had adored, was just a parasite in training. She called me embarrassing. She called me a burden. She admitted she only cared about the money. Something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a break. It was a realignment. The part of me that was a soft grandfather, the part that wanted to bake cookies and write checks, died in that moment. The part of me that was Isaiah Vance, the engineer, the man who understood stress, fractures, and load limits, took over. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a structural failure event. And when a structure fails, it doesn't just crack. It brings everything down with it. Thanks for the phone, I said to Ray. My voice was steady, cold. Did she have a happy birthday? Ray asked, trying to be nice. No, I said, walking back to my room. But she is going to have a very interesting year. I sat back down on my cot. I reached into my waistband and touched the recorder. I had hours of evidence on Marcus and Keisha. But I needed more. I needed to burn the whole field. I needed to make sure that when I fell, I landed on top of them. I pulled the thin blanket up to my chin. I didn't cry. Tears were for family. And I didn't have a family anymore. I had targets. I sat on that metal cot for another hour, staring at the peeling paint on the wall. Most men in my position would have broken. Most men would have curled up in a ball and wept for the family they had lost. But I was done weeping. Tears are for things that can be fixed. Tears are for tragedies that are accidental. This was not an accident. This was a controlled demolition of my life. And when a building is demolished, you don't cry over the rubble. You clear the site and you build something new. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was an engineer. And for 40 years I had lived by a simple code. Always have a backup system. Always have a redundancy. If the primary power fails, the generator kicks in. If the hydraulic line bursts, the mechanical lock engages. Marcus and Keisha thought they were smart. They thought they had stripped me of everything. My phone, my wallet, my keys. They thought they had cut all my lines of communication, but they made the classic mistake of the amateur criminal. They assumed their victim was static. They assumed I hadn't been preparing for this war long before the first shot was fired. I stood up and walked to the small closet in the corner of the room where the orderly had tossed the duffel bag Keisha had packed. I pulled out my old brown corduroy jacket. It was worn at the elbows and out of fashion, which is exactly why Marcus hated it. He called it my hobo coat. He wouldn't touch it if he could avoid it. I ran my fingers along the bottom hem of the lining. To the naked eye, it looked like a standard seam, but I felt the small, hard lump I had sewn there 3 weeks ago. I used my fingernail to pick at the loose thread I had left as a trigger. The seam popped open. I slid my hand inside the lining and pulled out a burner phone, a cheap $30 flip phone I had bought at Walmart with cash. I checked the battery. 70%. I flipped it open and the screen glowed with a beautiful blue light. I didn't call the police. The police would just see a civil dispute. They would see a senile old man arguing with his legal guardian. I needed a weapon sharper than the police. I needed a shark. I dialed the only number stored in the phone's memory. Julian Thorpe answered on the first ring. Julian was my college roommate, my best friend, and the most ruthless estate attorney in Atlanta. He was the only person I had told about my suspicions. "It is done," I said. My voice was calm. Julian let out a low whistle. "They actually did it. They put you in a home. Sunset Ridge," I confirmed. "Room 304. Marcus has power of attorney. He thinks he has total control. He told me the closing on the condo is in an hour." "Are you safe?" Julian asked. "I am safe enough," I said. "I have the recorder. I have the audio of the conspiracy. But Julian, I am ready to pull the trigger on the failsafe." "Are you sure, Isaiah?" Julian asked. "Once we execute the trust protocols, there is no going back. We are going to nuke their financial lives. This is your son we are talking about." I thought about Jasmine's voice on the phone. "It is humiliating, Grandpa. I am trading a burden for a future. I don't have a son," I said. "I have a biological dependent who has become a parasite. Execute the protocol, Julian. Burn it down." "Understood," Julian said. "I am logging into the portal now." Marcus thought the power of attorney was the golden key to my vault. He thought it gave him the right to sell my property and drain my accounts. But he had been so blinded by greed that he didn't read the fine print. And he certainly didn't know about the Vance family trust. 2 weeks before I signed that power of attorney, I had sat in Julian's office and transferred 80% of my assets into an irrevocable trust. My condo wasn't owned by Isaiah Vance anymore. It was owned by the Vance family trust. The bank accounts weren't in my name. They were in the trust's name. The power of attorney Marcus held only gave him authority over my personal checking account, which had about $2,000 in it. He had no legal authority to sell the condo. He had no legal authority to touch the investments. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the clause I had added to the power of attorney document itself. The one buried in Section 14, Paragraph C. The clause that Marcus had skimmed over in his rush to get the money. It was a conditional revocation clause. It stated clearly that if the principal me was ever involuntarily committed to a medical or residential facility, without the written consent of 2 independent physicians, the power of attorney would become null and void immediately. By dragging me to Sunset Ridge with only Dr. Pierce's fraudulent signature, Marcus hadn't tightened his grip on me. He had severed it completely. "Julian," I said, "what happens when the developer tries to wire the money for the condo?" Julian laughed. It was a cold professional sound. "The title search will flag the discrepancy instantly. The deed is in the trust's name. Marcus signed the sale contract as your power of attorney agent. He sold a property he doesn't have the authority to sell. That is fraud, Isaiah. Felony real estate fraud. The wire transfer will be blocked, the deal will collapse, and the developer will likely sue him for breach of contract before lunch." "And the bank accounts?" I asked. "I am freezing them now," Julian said. "I am notifying the bank of the fraudulent power of attorney usage. I am flagging every transaction from the last 6 months as suspicious activity. His credit cards, his joint accounts, everything connected to your social security number is going into lockdown." "Good," I said. "I want them to feel it, Julian. I want them to reach for their wallets and find nothing but air." "I will be there with the sheriff in 2 hours," Julian promised. "Sit tight, Isaiah. By noon you will be a free man, and they will be the ones in chains." I hung up the phone and hid it back in the lining of my jacket. I sat back on the bed and crossed my legs. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was the peace of a solved equation, the peace of a balanced load. Marcus was currently sitting at a closing table, probably smiling, probably shaking hands, thinking he was about to become a millionaire. He had no idea that the ground beneath his feet had already been mined. He had no idea that the old man he called a ghost was actually the architect of his ruin. I checked my watch. 9 a.m. The closing was starting. The fuse was lit. All I had to do was wait for the explosion. The explosion didn't sound like a bomb going off. It sounded like the quiet, polite voice of a title agent in a high-rise conference room 10 miles away. I wasn't there to see it, but Julian recounted every glorious detail later. It was 9:15 a.m. Marcus was sitting at a mahogany table across from the developer and his attorneys. He was already spending the money in his head. He had probably picked out the color of the Mercedes for Jasmine. He had probably planned the first-class menu for their trip to Cabo. Mrs. Gable, the title officer, adjusted her glasses and looked at her computer screen. She frowned. She tapped a few keys and frowned deeper. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, checking his watch. "We have a schedule to keep, Mr. Vance," Mrs. Gable said slowly. "I am looking at the final title update from the county recorder's office. It seems there is a cloud on the title." "A cloud?" Marcus laughed nervously. "That is impossible. My father owned that condo free and clear for 10 years. "He did," Mrs. Gable said, "until 2 weeks ago. According to this deed transfer recorded on the 1st of the month, the property is now owned by the Vance Family Trust." The room went silent. The developer looked at Marcus with eyes like flint. "Trust," Marcus stammered. "What trust?" "My father doesn't have a trust. I have his power of attorney. I handle all his legal affairs." "Apparently not," the developer's lawyer cut in. "If the property is in a trust, your power of attorney is useless regarding the sale unless you are the trustee." "Are you the trustee, Mr. Vance?" "No," Marcus said. "I don't know anything about a trust. This must be a mistake. A clerical error." Mrs. Gable turned her screen around. "It is not an error, sir. The trustee is listed as Mr. Julian Thorpe, and the beneficiary is the Eleanor Vance Foundation. You have no legal standing to sell this property." The developer stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. "Mr. Vance, you have wasted my time and my legal fees. You represented this property as yours to sell. That is fraud." "No, wait," Marcus pleaded, standing up so fast his chair tipped over. "I can fix this. My father is confused. He must have signed something without knowing what it was. I can get him to revoke it." "You will do no such thing," the lawyer said. "The deal is dead, and expect a bill for our time by end of day." They walked out, leaving Marcus standing alone in the empty conference room. But the nightmare was just starting for him. He pulled out his phone to call Keisha. He needed to tell her to stop spending. He needed to tell her the cash flow had just hit a brick wall. But Keisha was already at the Porsche dealership. She was sitting in the leather office chair across from the finance manager, signing the paperwork for a gray convertible. "It is a birthday gift for our daughter," she was telling the manager with a bright smile. "She has had a tough year, so we wanted to spoil her." "That is wonderful, ma'am," the manager said. "I just need to run the down payment. $5,000 on the Visa ending in 4098. "Do it," Keisha said, waving her hand dismissively. The manager swiped the card. He waited. He swiped it again. "That is strange," he said. "It is coming back declined." Keisha laughed. "That is ridiculous. That card has a $50,000 limit. Try it again. It is probably just a fraud alert because of the amount." He tried again. Declined. Code 05. Do not honor. Keisha felt a prickle of heat on her neck. "Try the Amex," she said, pulling another card from her Louis Vuitton purse. "The platinum one." He swiped the Amex. The machine beeped instantly. Declined. "Pickup card." "Pickup card?" Keisha asked, her voice rising an octave. "What does that mean?" "It means the issuer has flagged the account as stolen or fraudulent, ma'am," the manager said, his tone cooling significantly. "I have to keep the card." "This is a mistake," Keisha shrieked. "My husband is closing $1 million deal right now. We have money." "I am sure you do, ma'am," the manager said, standing up and taking the keys off the desk. "But until you can provide a valid form of payment, I cannot release the vehicle. Please leave." Keisha stormed out to the parking lot. She called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "The cards aren't working, Marcus," she screamed into the phone. "I am at the dealership and they treated me like a criminal." "The deal is dead, Keisha," Marcus whispered. His voice sounded hollow. "What?" "The house. The condo. He put it in a trust. He moved it all. We don't have the money." "What do you mean we don't have the money?" she yelled. "We spent 40 grand last week. We have the mortgage due. We have the tuition due." "I know," Marcus sobbed. "I checked the bank app. It is locked out. Access denied." "He froze us out, Keisha. The old man froze us out." Back at Sunset Ridge, the clock on the wall ticked to 10 a.m. and I was sitting on my bed, hands folded, waiting. I heard the commotion before I saw it. Heavy boots on the linoleum, authoritative voices. The door to my room buzzed and clicked open. Julian Thorpe walked in wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than the orderly's car. Behind him was a uniformed sheriff's deputy and a woman with a stethoscope around her neck. "Mr. Vance," Julian said with a grin, "I believe you are ready to check out." I stood up. I smoothed my rumpled shirt. "I am very ready, Julian." Dr. Pierce came running down the hallway, his white coat flapping. He looked sweaty and pale. "You can't do this," he stammered, blocking the doorway. "This patient is under a psychiatric hold. He is a danger to himself. I haven't authorized his release." Julian stepped forward. He didn't look like a lawyer anymore. He looked like a predator. "Dr. Pierce, I presume?" Julian asked. "Yes, I am the attending physician," Pierce said, trying to look important. "This is Dr. Evans," Julian said, gesturing to the woman beside him. "She is the chief of psychiatry at Grady Memorial. She is here to perform an independent evaluation as required by state law when a patient contests their commitment." "I have already evaluated him," Pierce argued. "He has advanced dementia." "Then you won't mind if Dr. Evans confirms your findings," Julian said, "unless you are afraid she will find something else." Dr. Evans stepped past him. She looked at me. Her eyes were sharp but kind. "Mr. Vance," she said, "can you tell me your full name and the current date?" "Isaiah Marcus Vance," I said clearly. "Today is Friday, October the 4th, and I am currently being held in Sunset Ridge against my will via a fraudulent power of attorney scheme orchestrated by my son." Dr. Evans looked at Pierce. She pulled a penlight from her pocket. "Follow the light, Mr. Vance." I followed it perfectly. She asked me to count backwards from 100 by sevens. I did it without hesitation. She asked me to remember 3 words and repeat them 5 minutes later. Apple, table, penny. 10 minutes later she turned to the deputy. "Officer, this man is fully oriented with no signs of cognitive decline. His memory is intact. His reasoning is sound. There is absolutely no medical basis for his confinement." The deputy nodded. He turned to Dr. Pierce. "Open the gate, doctor," the deputy said. "But the paperwork," Pierce stuttered. "Open the gate, or I will arrest you for unlawful imprisonment right now," the deputy barked. Pierce fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking so hard he dropped them twice. He knew the game was over. He knew his license was smoke. We walked out of that room. I didn't look back at the cot. I didn't look back at the peeling paint. I walked down the hallway past the nurse's station where Ray, the orderly, gave me a subtle nod of respect. We walked out into the bright morning sun. The air smelled like exhaust and freedom. Julian opened the door of his sedan for me. "Where to, Isaiah?" he asked. "Take me to the bank," I said. "I want to see the look on the manager's face when I reactivate my accounts. And then, take me to a steakhouse. I have a hunger that oatmeal can't satisfy." As we drove away, I pulled the burner phone from my jacket. I had one text message. It was from Marcus. "Dad, please pick up. We need to talk." I closed the phone and tossed it out the window. It clattered onto the asphalt and shattered. I didn't need to talk. I had said everything I needed to say in the legal documents Julian had just filed. The silence from my end was going to be the loudest noise they had ever heard. We sat in a booth at Malone's Steakhouse. I had a medium-rare ribeye in front of me and a glass of Cabernet in my hand. It was the first real meal I had eaten in 3 days. Julian sat across from me, tapping away on his laptop. He wasn't eating. He was working. "Are you sure about this, Isaiah?" he asked without looking up. "Once I hit send, there is no unringing this bell. This goes to the medical board. It goes to the police. It goes to Marcus's former partners and his current creditors. It goes to the Parents Association at Jasmine's school." I cut a piece of steak and chewed it slowly, savoring the flavor of freedom. "They didn't hesitate when they destroyed my reputation, Julian. They told the world I was crazy. They told the world I was dangerous. Now the world gets to hear who the dangerous ones really are. Send it." Julian hit the enter key. The email had a simple subject line: "Evidence of criminal elder abuse and financial fraud regarding Isaiah Vance." Attached were 12 audio files and a transcript of the last 6 months of my life. The fallout was faster than gravity. Marcus was in a meeting across town at that exact moment. He was trying to secure a high-risk bridge loan from a private equity shark named Mr. Henderson. Marcus was desperate. He needed cash to cover the checks that were bouncing all over Atlanta. I wasn't there, but Henderson told Julian about it later with a grim sort of satisfaction. Marcus was pitching his heart out. He was showing charts. He was promising triple returns. He was sweating through his expensive suit. Henderson was listening, skeptical, but listening. Then Henderson's phone buzzed. Then his partner's phone buzzed. Then the secretary's phone buzzed. It was the email. Henderson opened it. He saw my name. He saw Marcus's name. He clicked on the audio file labeled The Disposal Plan. The boardroom filled with the sound of Marcus's voice. Do you want the money or not? Do you want to lose the house? It is him or us. Marcus stopped talking. His face went the color of old ash. What is this? Henderson asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It is a misunderstanding, Marcus stammered. That is taken out of context. My father is not well. Henderson stood up. Get out. Please, Mr. Henderson, I can explain. Get out of my office, Henderson roared. Before I throw you out the window. I have a father in a home in Florida. If I ever heard someone talk about him like that, I would kill them. You are finished in this town, Vance. Security dragged Marcus out of the building. He stood on the sidewalk, his tie crooked, his briefcase open, spilling papers onto the dirty concrete. He checked his phone. His LinkedIn was blowing up. People were rescinding recommendations. Recruiters were canceling interviews. The audio file was already circulating on local business forums. In 10 minutes he had gone from a struggling entrepreneur to a social pariah. Keisha's reckoning came an hour later. She was at the hospital starting her shift. She thought she was safe. She thought the medical system would protect its own. She was wrong. She was charting at the nurses' station when two men in dark suits walked onto the floor. They weren't police. They were hospital risk management attorneys. Behind them was the chief of nursing. Nurse Vance, the chief said. Her voice was ice cold. Step away from the computer, please. Keisha looked up, forced a smile. Is there a problem? You are being placed on immediate unpaid suspension pending an investigation into medical fraud and patient endangerment, the attorney said loud enough for the other nurses to hear. That is ridiculous. Keisha laughed nervously. On what grounds? We received a file containing audio evidence that you conspired to falsify medical records for a family member, the attorney said. We also have a statement from Dr. Evans at Grady Memorial contradicting your dementia diagnosis. Security will escort you out. Keisha stood up. Her hands were shaking. She looked around for support, but her colleagues were looking at the floor or staring at her with disgust. They had heard the rumors. Now they knew the truth. You can't do this, she hissed. I am a senior nurse. Give me your badge, the chief said, holding out her hand. Keisha ripped the badge off her scrubs and threw it on the desk. Security flanked her. They walked her down the long main corridor, the walk of shame she had forced so many others to take. Patients watched. Doctors watched. By the time she hit the parking lot, she was crying. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a narcissist who had lost her audience. The final blow fell at 4 p.m. at the big house with the white pillars. I had asked Julian to drive me there. We parked down the street in his tinted sedan. I needed to see it. I needed to see the collapse of the false kingdom. A flatbed tow truck rumbled up the street. It backed into the driveway right up to the bumper of the black Range Rover. The repo man jumped out. He didn't knock on the door. He didn't ask for keys. He hooked the chains to the axle. The front door flew open. Jasmine ran out barefoot, wearing oversized sweatpants. Hey, she screamed, running down the steps. What are you doing? That is my mom's car. Bank order, miss, the driver said, not even looking at her. Payments are 90 days past due. The lease is terminated. You can't take it, Jasmine yelled, grabbing the door handle. My dad is gonna sue you. The driver just revved the winch. The Range Rover lifted into the air, its alarm blaring a futile protest. Then a second truck arrived. This one was for the Toyota sedan Marcus drove. Neighbors were coming out onto their porches. People were holding up phones, recording the spectacle. The Vance family, the people who had bragged about their wealth and their trips and their perfect life, were being stripped bare in public. A dark sedan pulled up behind the tow trucks. A man in a cheap suit got out, carrying a roll of blue tape and a stack of papers. He walked past the screaming Jasmine up to the front door. He taped a large orange notice to the mahogany wood. Notice of foreclosure. Eviction proceeding. Jasmine stopped screaming. She looked at the empty driveway. She looked at the notice on the door. She looked at the neighbors filming her. She looked small. She looked like a child who had suddenly realized the adults weren't in charge anymore. Marcus pulled up in an Uber a few minutes later. He saw the empty driveway. He saw the notice. He saw his daughter crying on the steps. He fell to his knees on the manicured lawn. He didn't look at his family. He put his head in his hands and rocked back and forth. Keisha arrived in a taxi. She stormed up the driveway, screaming at Marcus, hitting him on the shoulder, blaming him for everything. I watched from the car. I didn't feel joy. Joy is too light a word. I felt balance. I felt the satisfaction of a structural equation finally resolving to zero. The load had been too heavy on a weak foundation, and gravity had done its work. "Drive," I told Julian. "Where to?" he asked. "To my new life," I said. We drove away, leaving them in the ruins they had built for themselves. They had wanted the house. They had wanted the cars. They had wanted the status. Now they had the attention of the entire neighborhood, but for all the wrong reasons. They were finally famous. The civil destruction was complete, but the criminal consequences were just warming up. The law is a slow-moving machine usually. It grinds through paperwork and procedures at a glacial pace. But when you hand the district attorney 12 hours of high-definition audio recordings confessing to felonies, the machine speeds up. It becomes a steamroller. I was staying in a suite at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. It was Julian's treat. He said I needed a safe harbor while the storm made landfall. At 6 a.m. The next morning, Julian knocked on my door. He was holding 2 cups of coffee and an iPad. "It is happening, Isaiah," he said quietly. "The DA signed the warrants last night. They didn't want to risk them fleeing the jurisdiction." He set the iPad on the coffee table. He opened a local news app. The screen showed a live feed from a helicopter circling the gated community where Marcus lived. The headline scrolled across the bottom in red letters: "Police raid home of couple accused in viral elder abuse case." I sat down. I wrapped my hands around the warm coffee cup. I wasn't happy. No father is happy to watch his son be hunted, but I wasn't going to look away. I had to witness the end of the trajectory they had chosen. On the screen I saw 4 patrol cars and an unmarked detective vehicle pull up to the house. The lights were flashing silently in the dawn gloom. The foreclosure notice was still taped to the front door, a bright orange mark of shame. I watched 2 officers walk up the driveway. They didn't knock politely. They pounded on the wood. I couldn't hear the sound through the iPad, but I could imagine the hollow thud echoing through the empty house. The door opened. Marcus stood there. He was wearing the same wrinkled clothes from yesterday. He looked small. He looked broken. The lead officer said something. I saw Marcus shake his head. He pointed a finger toward the street, probably yelling. He was still trying to talk his way out of it. He was still trying to sell a lie that no one was buying anymore. The officer didn't argue. He spun Marcus around. He pulled his arms behind his back. The silver glint of handcuffs flashed in the morning light. My son was arrested on live television. Julian read the charges from his phone. Marcus Vance, charged with 1 count of elder abuse in the 1st degree, 1 count of grand larceny over $100,000, 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud, and 1 count of kidnapping, resulting in bodily injury. "Kidnapping?" I asked. "The involuntary commitment," Julian explained. "Since he used fraud to put you in that facility, it counts as kidnapping under the law. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence, Isaiah. He isn't walking away from this." On the screen, Keisha was brought out next. She wasn't fighting. She was weeping. Her head was down. Her hair was messy. She looked at the ground as the officer led her to the 2nd patrol car. "Keisha Vance," Julian read. "Charged with medical fraud, falsifying patient records, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and illegally prescribing controlled substances." "The drugs," I whispered. "The haloperidol," Julian nodded. "They found the prescription records. She used her hospital credentials to order it under a fake patient name. That is a federal crime, Isaiah. She is looking at 10 years. Then the camera zoomed in on the doorway. Jasmine was standing there. She was wrapped in a blanket. She looked terrified. She watched her father being shoved into the back of a police car. She watched her mother being led away in cuffs. She was standing in the doorway of a house she was being evicted from, watching the only parents she had ever known being taken to jail. She looked around. She looked at the police. She looked at the news cameras. She looked completely and utterly alone. Julian saw me flinch. "Child Protective Services is on the way," he said gently. "She is 18, so she won't go into foster care. But she has nowhere to go. She has an aunt in Chicago," I said. "Keisha's sister. She is a good woman. She never liked Marcus. I will make sure she gets there," Julian promised. I will buy the ticket myself. I watched the police cars drive away in a convoy of red and blue lights. The news helicopter panned up, showing the sprawling neighborhood, the swimming pools, the manicured lawns. It looked so perfect from the air, but down on the ground it was a crime scene. I turned off the iPad. The silence in the hotel room was heavy. "Do you want to go down to the station?" Julian asked. "They will want a statement." "No," I said. "I gave my statement when I released the recordings. I don't need to see them in a cage, Julian. I know what they are." I walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my son was being fingerprinted. He was trading his Italian suit for an orange jumpsuit. He was trading his arrogant freedom for a concrete cell. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't guilt. I had spent 3 years feeling guilt for things I hadn't done. This was grief. It was the final funeral for the family I thought I had. Eleanor was gone. And now Marcus was gone too. Not dead, but lost. Lost to greed. Lost to entitlement. Lost to the belief that love is a transaction. I thought about the lesson I had tried to teach him when he was a boy. You build a foundation before you build the roof, Marcus. He had tried to build a penthouse on quicksand. Julian stood up. "I have to go to the courthouse to file the final restraining orders," he said. "Do you need anything?" "I need a new phone," I said, turning back to him. "And I need a realtor." "A realtor?" Julian asked. "I am not going back to the condo," I said. "That place is tainted. It smells like betrayal. I want something new, something high up, something with a view where I can see the storms coming before they hit me." "I will make some calls," Julian said. He left the room. I was alone again. But for the first time in a year, I didn't feel lonely. I felt clean. The infection had been cut out. The wound would scar, but it would heal. I sat back down and finished my coffee. It was cold now, but I drank it anyway. I was an engineer. I dealt with reality as it was not as I wished it to be. My family was destroyed. My heart was bruised, but I was still standing. The structure had held. The failsafe had worked. And now I had to do the hardest work of all. I had to figure out who Isaiah Vance was when he wasn't being a father or a victim. I had to start the rebuilding process, and this time I would be the only one holding the blueprints. The new apartment was exactly what I asked for. It was on the 25th floor of a glass tower in Buckhead. It had a doorman named Samuel, who had been a Marine, and checked every visitor like they were entering the Pentagon. The walls were thick, soundproof concrete. The windows were floor to ceiling, offering a panoramic view of the city where I had built my career. But the best feature wasn't the view or the marble countertops. It was the silence. For the first time in 3 years, my phone didn't ring with demands. There were no texts asking for loans. There were no guilt trips about tuition or cars or vacations. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. It was heavy with the weight of peace. 2 weeks after the arrests, the prison calls started. I was drinking my morning coffee when the phone buzzed. Unknown number. I knew what it was. Julian had warned me. The automated voice was mechanical and cold. "You have a collect call from an inmate at the Fulton County Detention Center. Press 1 to accept." I looked at the phone. I imagined Marcus standing in a line of other men in orange jumpsuits holding a greasy receiver to his ear. I imagined him desperate. I imagined him wanting to explain, wanting to apologize, wanting money for a better lawyer. I didn't press 1. I didn't press 2. I simply pressed the red button on the side of the phone. The ringing stopped. The next day, he called again. I declined it again. He called every day for a month. Each time I declined it. It wasn't cruelty. It was a boundary. I had listened to him for 40 years. I had listened to his lies, his excuses, his manipulations. I had heard enough. There was nothing left to say that could change the facts of what he did. Keisha tried writing letters. They were forwarded to Julian's office. Julian scanned them and sent them to me. I opened one just to see. "Isaiah, please," it read in her looping handwriting. "I am sorry. I was pressured. Marcus made me do it. I am a mother. Think of Jasmine. Please help me get a plea deal." She was still blaming everyone else. Still using Jasmine as a shield. Still trying to engineer a way out. I deleted the file without replying. Then there was Jasmine. Her emails were the hardest to read. They didn't come to me directly. They went to the new email address I had set up for legal correspondence. Subject: "Grandpa, please read. I don't have anywhere to go. Aunt Linda says I can't stay on her couch forever. I had to drop out of school. I am working at a diner, but I can't afford rent. I am scared. Please, Grandpa. I just need a little help. I sat in my leather chair overlooking the city lights and read those words. A part of me, the grandfather part, wanted to wire her money immediately, wanted to rescue her, but the engineer in me knew that would be a mistake. Rescue is not redemption. Money fixes poverty, but it doesn't fix character. Jasmine had been part of the team that mocked me. She had called me embarrassing. She had viewed me as a resource, not a person. If I saved her now, she would learn nothing. She would learn that tears and desperation are just another currency to buy what you want. She needed to learn that actions have echoes. She needed to learn to stand on her own feet, even if those feet were tired. I didn't reply. I closed the laptop. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, but it was necessary. Instead of funding their defense, I put my money to work where it mattered. I established the Eleanor Vance Foundation for Elder Justice. I endowed it with $2 million. The goal was simple: to provide top-tier legal defense for seniors who were being financially exploited by their families. I hired Julian as the lead counsel. We set up a hotline. Within a week we had 500 calls, stories just like mine. Fathers whose sons had stolen their deeds, mothers whose daughters had drained their savings. I started visiting community centers. I wasn't just a donor, I was a witness. I stood on stages and told my story. I played the recordings. I showed them the power of attorney document. I taught them about the fail-safe clause. I saw the lights go on in their eyes. I saw them realizing they weren't helpless. I was building an army of gray-haired warriors who were ready to fight back. The final act of the tragedy played out 6 months later in Superior Court. I attended the sentencing hearing. I sat in the back row wearing my best suit. I didn't want them to see me, but I needed to see justice. Marcus was brought in first. He had lost weight. His head was shaved. He looked 10 years older. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Marcus tried to speak, but he choked up. He mumbled something about being sorry. The judge wasn't moved. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, his voice booming through the courtroom, "you took a sacred trust and you weaponized it. You looked at your father and saw prey. That is a level of depravity that demands a severe response. 15 years. No parole eligibility for 10. Keisha got 8 years. She screamed when the gavel came down. She looked back at the gallery, scanning the faces, looking for someone to save her. Her eyes met mine for a split second. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at her with the blank expression of a stranger. She collapsed and had to be dragged out by the bailiffs. Jasmine wasn't there. Julian told me she couldn't afford the bus ticket from Chicago. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Atlanta afternoon. The air tasted sweet. The sun felt warm on my face. A reporter recognized me and ran over a microphone in her hand. "Mr. Vance," she asked, breathless, "do you have any comment on the sentencing? Do you feel justice was served?" I stopped. I adjusted my tie. "Justice is a mechanic," I said. "It balances the scales, but it doesn't fix the machine. The machine is broken. All we can do is make sure the parts that caused the failure are removed." I walked away. I walked to my car where my driver was waiting. I didn't look back at the courthouse. I didn't look back at the past. I went home to my quiet apartment. I made a cup of tea. I sat by the window and watched the sunset turn the sky purple and gold. I was alone. I had no wife. I had no son. I had no granddaughter. By all social metrics, I was a tragic figure. But as I watched the city lights flicker on one by one, I didn't feel tragic. I felt safe. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had protected my legacy. I had survived the betrayal. The silence in the room wasn't lonely anymore. It was the sound of a structural integrity holding firm. I was still standing, and for tonight that was enough. 2 years is a long time in the life of a structure. It is enough time for concrete to cure completely. It is enough time for the seasons to weather a new facade. And it is enough time to determine if a foundation is going to settle or if it is going to crack. I spent those 2 years building the Eleanor Vance Foundation into a fortress for the vulnerable. We saved 300 homes from predatory relatives. We put 4 lawyers on full-time payroll. I was busy. I was purposeful. I was happy. I had stopped waiting for the phone to ring. I had stopped looking for familiar faces in the crowd. I had accepted that the branch of my family tree that bore Marcus and his wife had been pruned. It was a necessary amputation to save the trunk. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, a letter arrived at my office. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a text. It was a physical envelope made of cheap, thin paper. The handwriting was familiar but changed. It wasn't the bubbly looping script of a spoiled teenager anymore. It was smaller, tighter, the writing of someone who was trying to save space because paper cost money. I opened it with my letter opener slicing through the top edge with surgical precision. "Dear Grandpa," it began, "I am writing this because today is your 74th birthday. I don't expect you to reply. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I remember." I paused. I had forgotten it was my birthday. "I am not writing to ask for money," the letter continued. "I am working 2 jobs now. I wait tables at a diner on the north side during the day and I stock shelves at a grocery store at night. I rent a room in a basement apartment that smells like mildew. It is a long way from the big house with the white pillars. I hated you for a long time, Grandpa. I hated you when the car was taken. I hated you when I had to leave school. I hated you when my friends stopped talking to me because I was the girl from the news. I thought you were cruel. I thought you were ruining my life on purpose. But 6 months ago I saw an old man at the diner. He was counting out pennies to pay for a cup of coffee. His hands were shaking. I saw his daughter yelling at him outside, telling him to hurry up because she needed to get to the mall. I looked at his face and I saw you. I saw the look you used to have when Dad would ask for a check. The look of being used. I went to the bathroom and I threw up. I finally understood what we did to you. We didn't just take your money. We took your dignity. We treated you like an object. And that is a sin that I can't pay back with a minimum wage job. I am 20 years old now. I am taking classes at the community college. I am paying for them myself. It is taking forever, but I am doing it. I just wanted to say that I miss you, not the bank account. I miss the man who taught me how to fish. I hope you are happy, Grandpa. You deserve to be. Love, Jasmine. I put the letter down on my mahogany desk. I stared at the rain streaking the glass of my window. My heart wanted to run to her. My heart wanted to drive to that diner and buy her a car and pay for her tuition and bring her home. But I wasn't just a grandfather. I was an engineer. And I knew that if you patch a crack without fixing the underlying stress, it will just break again. Jasmine was showing signs of repair, but I needed to verify the structural integrity. I pulled out a sheet of my personal stationery. I clicked my pen. I didn't write a check. I wrote a scope of work. Dear Jasmine, apologies are like blueprints. They are useless unless you build the structure. If you truly want to reconnect, it will not be as my dependent, but as my equal. And equals share values, not just DNA. Here are my conditions for a meeting. 1. You will maintain a 3.5 gigapascals in your community college courses for 2 consecutive semesters. Send me the transcripts. 2. You will volunteer 200 hours at the Eleanor Vance Foundation. You will not tell them who you are. You will answer the hotline. You will listen to the stories of the people your parents tried to emulate. You need to see the wreckage from the ground level. 3. You will write a check to the foundation for $50 every month. It is a restitution payment. It will hurt. You will miss that money. That is the point. Do this for 1 year. Then call me. Isaiah Vance. I mailed the letter. I expected silence. I expected her to give up when she realized there was no immediate payoff. But a month later, a check arrived for $50. It was a money order bought at a gas station. The next month, another check came. Julian came into my office 3 months later, with a strange look on his face. Isaiah, he said, we have a new volunteer at the intake center, a young girl named Jazz. She is relentless. She stays late. She cries with the clients. She holds their hands when they tell their stories. Does she know you are watching her? I asked. No, Julian said. She thinks she is just another volunteer. But yesterday she handled a call from a man whose son sold his house out from under him. She stayed on the line for 3 hours, until he was safe. She told him that family isn't blood, family is who protects you. Good, I said. Let her work. For a year I watched her from a distance. I saw the transcripts come in, A's and B's. I saw the $50 checks arrive like clockwork, even though I knew it meant she was probably skipping lunch to pay them. I saw her change. The entitlement melted away. Her face grew thinner, but her eyes grew stronger. She wasn't the princess in the tower anymore. She was a worker in the field. Exactly 1 year from the day I sent my reply, my office phone rang. Mr. Vance, the receptionist said. There is a Jasmine Vance on the line. She says she has completed the scope of work. Put her through, I said. Grandpa. Her voice was shaking. I did it. I know, I said. I have the file right here. Can I see you? She asked. I don't need anything. I just want to buy you a cup of coffee. I saved up. We met at a small coffee shop in Midtown, neutral ground. I arrived 10 minutes early, but she was already there. She was wearing a waitress uniform and cheap sneakers, but she was standing tall. She looked like Eleanor. I walked up to the table. She stood up. She looked like she wanted to hug me, but she held back. She respected the boundary. "Hi, Grandpa," she said. "Hello, Jasmine," I said. We sat down. She ordered 2 black coffees. She pulled out a worn wallet and counted out $5.50. She put the money on the counter. It was the first time in her life she had ever paid for me. We talked for 2 hours. We didn't talk about Marcus. We didn't talk about Keisha. We talked about her classes. We talked about the foundation. We talked about the future. "I want to be a lawyer," she said. "Not a corporate lawyer. I want to work for you. I want to help the people Mom and Dad hurt." I looked at her. I checked the foundation. I checked the load-bearing walls. They were solid. "We will see," I said. "Finish your degree first. Then we can talk about a job." "Fair enough," she smiled. As we walked out into the sunlight, I felt a shift in the universe. The tragedy wasn't undone. The scars were still there. Marcus was still in a cell. Keisha was still disgraced. But something green was growing out of the ashes. I realized then that I hadn't just built a fail-safe to protect my money. I had built a crucible to test my bloodline. The heat had destroyed the impurities, but it had refined the gold. Jasmine hugged me before she got on the bus. It wasn't a grabby hug. It was a solid grip. "See you next week, Grandpa," she asked. "Next week," I confirmed. "Same time. But next time I buy." I watched her bus pull away. I walked back to my tower alone, but not lonely. I was an engineer. I had faced a catastrophic structural failure. I had cleared the debris. I had redesigned the system. And now, slowly, carefully, brick by brick, I was rebuilding the house. And this time I knew it would stand. We often believe that the highest form of love is self-sacrifice. But we forget that a foundation cracked by constant giving cannot hold up a family home. Isaiah Vance taught us that being a provider does not mean becoming a prey. When we shield our loved ones from the consequences of their own greed, we aren't protecting them. We are crippling their character. True dignity isn't just about what you have built. It is about knowing when to lock the door to protect it. Remember, no is not an act of rejection. It is the structural steel that keeps your self-respect from collapsing under the weight of expectation. If you believe that respect must be earned and not just inherited, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Share this with someone who needs to remember their own worth today.